Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a beer, it's time for some part of Exile discussion. So 3.15.1 patch notes have been released, and actually the patch has gone live now, just in the last couple of minutes, and I thought I'd go through it. This is not as big a change as you might expect from the name. So usually the 3.x.1 and 3.x.2 are the major patches within a specific expansion, and then there'll be minor ones like 3.15.0.d. However, in this league, 3.15.0.d was the big patch. That's the one that had all of the massive changes in it, and for some reason wasn't called 3.15.1, whereas this is a smaller one. So in terms of the changes to expect, there's new vendor recipes, which I'll report when they're known, for converting instilling orbs to enkindling orbs and vice versa. And they're saying they're not hard to work out. So, some of the things I would immediately try would be vendoring 3 instilling orbs. Do you get an enkindling orb? Vendoring 3 enkindling. Do you get an instilling? Vendoring 2 instilling orbs plus a glassblower's bauble. See what gets returned. These are things I'd be trying, but chances are, especially given that they're saying they're not hard to work out, that chances are that they're already known. I think these will be things that will be used extensively in solo self-found. There's a couple of changes to some alt qualities there. Then there's a change to the way that the Maven's memory game works. Specifically, the Maven's memory game is being more forgiving in softcore. If you fail a memory game and die, then leave the area and then re-enter, the memory game is now considered complete. This, I think, is something GGG have gone back and forth on a couple of times. They've settled on the idea that losing a portal is sufficient. You shouldn't lose a portal and then also have to do the memory game again. That's their current decision on where it goes. There's been a change to the Heart of the Grove harvest encounter, where people that don't know, running the Heart of the Grove for the first time adds 5 to the size of your horticulture station. So it's a fairly useful thing to get. However, the Heart of the Grove Sacred Blossoms are extremely rare, and because they're extremely rare, it is the people who really know what they're doing with harvest crafting that buy them for exorbitant prices in order to basically get themselves more power to abuse harvest. Because as much as harvest has been nerfed, harvest is still an incredibly powerful crafting mechanism in the game. So what they're changing is that this Sacred Blossom ability to expand to 15 horticrafting bench station slots now applies to everyone that's in the area, as long as they're in the area at the start and the finish of the Ashabi fight. It's not enough just to be there at the end when she dies. You need to be there at the start and the finish. So that's going to be something that I think is going to make this encounter work a little bit more like people expect. But it's still going to be something that means that in order to get the benefit of this extended horticrafting station on 4 players, you do need to beat 4-player hit point Ashabi. There's a couple of Pantheon changes around. So Glace is now giving, instead of Atesha, is now giving the stun and block recovery change. I think the reason for this is that Atesha is not always there in the Iceberg map. It's one of the Warband bosses, and so you needed to do a bunch of attempts to get this Pantheon power. Whereas with it coming from Glace instead, it's much more deterministic. You just do a beach map and you get it. Now, there's a change being made to Quarry Farming. Quarry Farming is one of those things that comes up pretty much in every league, where one of the most powerful ways to interact with the league mechanic is to go to the Act 9 zone, the Quarry, and run low-tier versions of whatever this content is over and over. Ultimately, Quarry Farming is very much not fun. It's not something that casual players do. It's something that power gamers sometimes feel compelled to do because it's one of the most powerful ways to engage with some of the league mechanics. And I'm pretty glad to see that they're doing something about it. That said, there'll be a second best place that will just replace it. The reason people go to the Quarry is because when you go to the waypoint, the league mechanics are always very, very close to the waypoint. This first came up in Delve League, so 3.4, so it's almost 3 years ago now, where basically Nico's Sulfite poo pile would always be within about 3/4 of a screen of the waypoint, and so people would then always go back to the Quarry over and over again. That's a really boring way to play the game, and I'm glad to see it's no longer a rewarding way to play it. Then there's just a couple of other little changes to various microtransactions and things like that. The interesting thing, though, there's a bunch of bug fixes listed here, which you can have a look through. But the main thing that I think is significant, Royale changes as well. But once you go past that, there's going to be some changes coming up to ROG. ROG's crafting has a thing where it's talking about removing the lowest level mods. And if you're an experienced crafter that really knows the ins and outs of websites like PoEDB, then this information is currently unambiguous, but it is not provided inside the game client at all. And so this change will be massively useful for people that are more casual when it comes to crafting. They're going to get a lot out of this change. This is not in 3.15.1, but it will be coming soon. Will there be an improvement in the UI for placing explosions in Expedition? We're reducing the amount of Expedition ground that cannot have explosives placed on it. And I just say this is one of those changes that should have happened earlier, but it's good to see it happening now. There's no real clear feedback as to why you can't place the explosives, and that's something that's really frustrating. And I think actually that's probably the reason that people ask for a better UI. And then there's just a reminder about the fact that you can undo explosive placement. Now, here's the thing that I think will be really significant. There's Instilling Orb changes. So Instilling Orb mods are being added to the crafting bench at some point. This is not in 3.15.1. This is coming soon. So the players have the power to directly determine which mod is added to their flasks. So it costs multiple Instilling Orbs and Glassblowers baubles. And I'm kind of expecting that based upon the historical precedent, which is the precedent set by the 5-link and 6-link recipes, this will probably cost about 1.5 times what it costs to naturally roll the mod on it. So, expect something like 24 Instilling Orbs, because Instilling Orbs are believed to be 1 in 16 to hit any specific outcome. The reason we're only doing this for Instilling Orbs is they have far more modifiers, and having the wrong instilling trigger condition is often worse than not having one at all, which I agree with. So that's a huge upgrade. Enkindling Orbs are not getting this because they're just basically seen as an upside. I think it is Instilling Orbs that needed them, and I think that there'll be a lot of use for this recipe, just as a way for the variance-averse player to avoid having to, continually source more copies of a flask, so that they can use the basic flask, and then also have the instilled version that they're trying to roll. Now it'll just be a case of save up your Instilling Orbs, and if you're variance averse, just use that crafting bench mod. Don't know where they're going to drop, of course. These crafting recipes are something you generally need to find in game, so we'll have to figure out where they're going to drop, but that's something that will come up later. Okay, so there's a comment here that monsters reapply curses too rapidly. I think that is important with the current changes that have been made to the curse immunity, like to warding. So Silence Curse is being removed from Hex Font. That's going to be a pretty transformative change. That's going to make Hex Font monsters no longer scary except for their ability to lag up your PC, because there seemed to be a strong bias towards using Silence. That's also going to remove the benefits of you cannot be affected by Silence duels. Also, packs of monsters that can apply curses will share a cooldown for curse application. So that's going to be another significant thing whereby a lot of the, and this mostly comes up from elemental resistance debuff curses like conductivity. These are no longer going to be as spammy. So there's a question about, is Bone Shatter bugged? And they're saying here that the problem is actually with stun. So Bone Shatter has an on stunning a monster proc, and it seems like they're talking about this, but it's not going to be for quite some time. So if you've been finding that that Bone Shatter has felt buggy, then the problem is probably actually the mechanics of stun instead, and as a result, it's not going to be fixed for a while. Last thing is that, can Gwennen provide more valuable unique items? So this one's interesting. There's going to be more chances to get good stuff out of Gwennen. Gwennen has been in a strange spot where basically her mechanics are Like, her mechanics are very much, you need to be targeting very specific bases, and even then it's super high variance, and I think most people have come to the conclusion that it's not really worth bothering with Gwennen. It'd be interesting to see what happens when Gwennen gets changed here. I think one of the outcomes will be that there will be an absolute cratering in the value of a lot of the top uniques. Not necessarily thinking about the things like Headhunter here. I'm talking the things that are very rare, but that that where supply is just a little bit more than, sorry, just a little bit less than demand at the moment. So this is items like Arakali's Fang, Martyr of Innocence, also Chevron's Wrappings, Prism Guardian, Void Battery, all these sorts of things. I think that they're going to be crated. I think what should happen with Gwennen, I think it probably keep some of the valuable unique items rare, because otherwise they're just going to cease being valuable unique items. But add more and different jackpot drops to it. So for instance, if you take a 2-stone ring from Gwennen, give it some chance that instead of, as well as the chance of getting, let's say it's a lightning and cold one, as well as the chance of getting a Call of the Brotherhood, give it some chance to be a double influenced ring. Give it some chance to be a well-rolled ring. If you take something that's, say, a prophecy wand, keep it a small chance of getting a void battery, but also give it a chance to be a heist well-rolled and enchanted prophecy wand. Some of the things like that would be I think a better way to do it, so that because with Gwennen, when there's a deterministic way to farm a specific unique item, obviously that's really good in solo self-found, but most players do play the trade league, and then the item just craters in value as a result of it, and ceases to be a big reward. I think just having more diversity of good outcomes would help more on Gwennen than having more common pulls of the current top ones. The other thing that could be added would be influenced versions of the uniques, which again would be at the super jackpot end. That would be something that I think would also help make Gwennen a little bit more appealing. Anyways, that's my thoughts on 3.15.1. It's not the massive patch that 3.15.0 Delta was, but it does seem to have quite a few things in it. But the thing to really wait for will be these changes to these changes that are coming to the instilling orbs. So we'll find this out when these are actually added, but it's not quite there yet, unless they've added it in a hotfix since 3.15.1 went live. That's all I've got. May your Valobs have interesting results, and I will see you around.